My husband forgot the past 8 years and now wants a divorce. I have been with my husband Josh since we were seniors in high school. We broke up shortly after high school graduation but got back together a year afterwards. We overcame long distance, educational and job difficulties, unplanned pregnancies, medical issues, everything. He is my first everything and I cannot imagine life without him. But now I have to get used to it. 2 months ago, Josh woke up next to me shocked. He asked what I was doing on his chest and who I was. He likes to sometimes wake me up saying, "Hey, who's this beautiful lady on my chest?" But this was different and he wouldn't let me touch him and he started demanding to know where he was and where a woman named Lisa was. I was confused and scared to say the least. I tried to explain that I'm his wife and that he's home safe. Josh yelled he would have never married me in a million years. He started running around our house looking at photos of us and out of the windows. He refused to let me get too close, so I called his mom and she talked to him on his phone. He freaked out that I knew his passcode and he started wailing about what was going on. I called his therapist and he was taken to the hospital. He was put on $5,150 and I had his mom come take him when it was up. When he got home a week later, he accepted that I was his wife but kept saying us being together was wrong. He didn't go to work for a bit and I noticed he was obsessively searching for a woman named Lisa who went to a college he turned down for me. I have never seen this woman and I wondered if he possibly had an affair in the past. I found messages to a number from him a week later where he begged Lisa to talk to him but she said she had no idea who he was. The phone wasn't public so he must have it memorized. I asked his mom about it and she asked him, to which he said she's the love of my life. He stopped and was so distraught he tried to take his own life. He went back to the facility and was evaluated again. I was given options but I wanted him home. So he was prescribed some medication. His sister stayed with us until he seemed stable. But Josh would act so coldly towards me, asking questions about why we got back together and how upset he was that we were. When we broke up originally, I cursed him out for 3 hours straight and later found out he had made a move on the girl he told me not to worry about. He would say he didn't know how he could love me again after all I said. He refused to do chores and would stay out into the night for hours. Over a month ago he came to me and asked for a divorce. He said when he told me that I should have found someone better after high school, and that I should have done that because he can't bring himself to love me. How can I be with someone who is so obviously embarrassed to be with the old me? I told him he's not that insecure little boy anymore and he was the love of my life. He had been publicly embarrassed years ago in regards to me. He used to be insecure that I was too good for him and that everyone knew that. My father, after meeting him, told me he was a loser. But I reminded Josh I chose him because I love him. I told him we moved past that and I thought we were good. He didn't believe me and said he couldn't imagine being happy with me. He left that night and was fine coming to get his things to move in with his sister. He looks at me with nothing but apathy and it hurts. His sister urged him to try again and he came back and I told him I don't want to throw away 10 years together over a mental break. We were both thriving career-wise and had virtually no issues up to this point. We were renovating this very house together. He agreed to try and we were fine for more than a month. It was like trying to date him again but everything seemed to moving in a positive direction. We even slept together and I thought that was proof things were great. He was so caring and attentive like I remembered, so I figured he was getting there. He initiated it and wouldn't stop telling me how beautiful I was, like he remembered. Then 3 nights ago something happened. I came home from work to find Josh sitting quietly at the kitchen table, drinking. He never does that. He had been waiting for me and then slammed divorce papers and his phone onto the table. His phone was open to text messages with explicit photos and mentioning of a night together with a woman named Lisa. Not the same one but apparently someone he met on Tinder. I will never forget the venom in his voice when he said, "Now will you divorce me?" I went to our room and locked the door and just cried. I heard him leave and his sister took him away. She texted me an apology and said she's turning him back into the facility, but I told her to just take him and I'll sign the papers but not to tell him I was. I'm floored. My mother and brother are flying to help me with this. Everyone is shocked and I cannot fathom what has happened. We had been trying for a baby too. I'm seeing if I miss my period because we did it unprotected, but now I wonder if I should get tested for STDs too. I accidentally committed into a family with my best friend and it's the best thing to ever happen to me. I had a very rough childhood growing up. I didn't have a dad, and my mom was never really there because she had a rough battle with health issues and got hooked on narcotics. I had friends growing up, but I had my best friend since I was 12. Her name is Lily. We have been extremely close due to our childhood issues and we had always been there for each other. We talked about being together, but got cold feet because we were scared that if it didn't work, we couldn't recover from that. When I was 18, I didn't really want to go to college. School had never been for me. So I went into a trade. I work long hours, but it's been worth it and I make solid money right now for my position. I'll come back to this in a bit. When we were 19, Lily got pregnant by her boyfriend. The dude somehow managed to avoid child support payments and broke up with her, and has not seen the kid once in his life. Complete deadbeat. Makes me disgusted. Lily was scared, but I told her I would be here when she needed it. She didn't have parents that would help, but I told her I'd help reckon when the kid gets here. Lo and behold, she gave birth to a beautiful little girl named Kelsey. I was there when she was born and it was a weird moment. I don't know how to explain it, but I did feel happy for her. Now we're 21, and ever since then this little girl has had me wrapped around her finger. I've done my round of the diapers, bottles, middle of the night screaming, etc. Every day I get home from work we sit there and we watch her little shows, and we spend a lot of time together as the three of us as well. When we walk, she grabs my pointer finger with her whole hand because it's so little. She stands up and kisses me on the cheek after I change her, and she loves her snuggles where she just lays on top of me with her head laid up against my chest. As of recently, she has begun speaking. She has been calling me daddy. I've been feeling really weird about it lately. Feeling like it's not right, and that someday she needs to know the truth. I talked to Lily about it one night and got her opinion of it. She sat there with a slight grin and then she came up behind me and hugged me. She said you're the best dad she could ever ask for. And then proceeded to tell me we'll worry about talking to her when she understands. As far as she is concerned, you are her daddy, and you are to me as well. I turned around and hugged her. We had a long talk about what's been going on lately as we have been engaging in not so just friends activities, and she just said it like this: I like our family. I just kind of froze for a second and asked her, is this what we want to do? And she followed up by saying, I think we've been doing this for a while now, and then laughed. We had a great moment and agreed to be a family. I had told her I needed to run to the drugstore for some diapers for Kelsey. On the way there, I bursted into tears. I cried for maybe a good 30 minutes. I don't even know how to describe what I was thinking and feeling, but I was happy. I just know that there isn't a thing in this world I wouldn't do for those two. It feels like I can relax and reflect on everything that's happened at this point. But also I don't. I basically have a family I'm looking out for. Like no matter what happens, I have people who will depend on me, and something like that makes me want to be the best man I can. In about another year, I will have my official license for my trade, giving me a substantial pay raise and a new job that I already have lined up. I've already started looking at houses and rings. We've also talked about having our own once I get my license. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I wanted to share it with someone, but I don't really have those people in my life. I am happy, and you all deserve to be too. I got the sweetest revenge on my roommate after the heinous things she did to me. In 2008 I had just left my husband. I caught him cheating multiple times, and I was just over it. A new girl, we will call her Amy, started at my job and we made a fast friendship. I was in the middle of packing up and moving out of my house. I needed a roommate for a new apartment I was looking at because my wages weren't going to pay the bills, so we moved in together and lived peacefully together for a while. I was moving on with my life. I had gotten a better paying job, was spending time with my friends, and I felt okay with life at the time. At the time I was 25, single, and not looking for anything serious, so I had a friends with benefits who would stop over a few times a week. Amy was cool with it on the surface. It did not affect her in any way. My friend didn't hang out at our place. He didn't eat at our place. He didn't use our household supplies. My relationship with him affected her exactly 0%, but I guess she was a little annoyed about the fact that I was getting some attention and she was not. She would flirt with him, go visit him where he worked, etc., but he was absolutely not interested in her. This is where things started to go downhill. For context, she had been married a few times, she was 13 years older than me, and all the dads had full custody of their respective kids. She was dating someone but he was already in a relationship, so he wasn't about to commit to anything besides stopping by for 30 minutes after he worked the night shift every day. I tried to point out all the red flags, but she was convinced it was love. This dude used to hit me constantly in front of her. He was very open about being in a committed relationship with his girlfriend, so I have no idea why Amy thought this was going anywhere. After a few months I met someone I wanted to be serious with, so we started dating. We will call the guy Tom. Tom and I got serious pretty fast. He was living in a horrible situation, so he moved in with Amy and I pretty quickly. I think it was after about a month of dating. So we have our room and she has her own room. The bills went from a 50-50 split to three-way split to make sure things were still even. We had a shared kitchen, living room, and bathroom. After Tom moved in, she started openly hitting on him in front of me. Every guy I had at my house she had to hit on, even if they were just friends. None of them ever took her up on it. Every single one turned her down, and I think this added greatly to her oncoming behavior. Over the next couple of weeks Amy did a complete 180. She stopped paying rent, refused to buy any food, and would just eat whatever Tom and I bought, and would not wash her dishes. We had two cats, one was hers and one mine, and she would never clean the litter in her room, so her cat would use our hallway floor as a bathroom every single day. Every day when I got home from work there was a big steaming pile of cat shit right inside my front door, sitting in the middle of a giant puddle of urine. My cat was locked in my room at night with her own supplies, so there was zero chance it was her. It was the same thing every morning by the front door. Whenever she was done eating the food she stole from me, she would set her plate with the leftovers on the kitchen floor for her cat to pick at. She would leave the plate there for days. To the point that if I didn't pick them up, there would be multiple plates on the floor with food in various stages of decay. All of my dishes started going missing, except for the cat's plates, of course. And what dishes were left, she refused to wash ever. She used my toilet paper, my laundry soap, even my tampons. This went on for about 2 months and it just kept getting progressively worse. She would use panty liners every day and would change them multiple times a day and stuff them in the garbage can in the bathroom. She would leave it there completely overflowing and spilling onto the floor for days until I caved and put on gloves and threw them out. The trash can would be full in about a week, so this happened a few times. That's not even the worst of it. My expensive DSLR camera went missing. I was a photography hobbyist at the time, but it was my dream to be a professional photographer and own my own photography business. I would shoot stuff for friends and family as practice, and one day I grabbed my camera bag from the shared living room, and as soon as I picked it up, I felt my heart sink into my stomach. You know that instant dread that grips you the second you realize something truly gut-wrenching has happened. I opened the bag and of course the camera is gone. That was an expensive camera for that time of my life, and it was a gift from my parents, so I was truly devastated. I couldn't prove a thing and I wasn't even sure how long it had been missing. It could have been her boyfriend that took it, but either way it was gone. So now this is it. This is the last straw. I need this girl out. I went from nice girl to a fucking psycho in about 30 seconds. I'm not the violent type and I hate confrontation. I'm not waiting for a fucking eviction to go through, and I really didn't have the money for that anyway, so here's where I start my petty revenge. Amy wants to live here with me rent-free, stealing my shit, hitting on my boyfriend, and neglecting her cat, so be it. But it's going to be on my fucking terms. One vital piece of information. In my divorce, the dickhead moved back in with mom and I took everything from the house to my new apartment, so I owned everything and the lease was in my name. I started by changing the Wi-Fi password and the computer password. The following week I had my cable company come and remove the cable lines to her room. I bought a small fridge for my room and a cabinet and put all my food and personal supplies in my bedroom and put a secure lock on my door. I hid my pots and pans. I locked up the soap and toilet paper. The cabinets were empty. I paid for it all, and I would be the only one using it. When her cat shit on the floor, I would pick it up and smear it on her bedroom doorknob. Overflowing bathroom trash cans filled to the brim with her panty liners were dumped on her bed. I removed the knobs to the washer and the dryer. I did everything possible to make her life uncomfortable. I did other small stuff. Anything that came to mind. A few months prior, Amy and I had been working at the same store and she borrowed another coworker's laptop. She ended up getting fired, but she never gave the laptop back and the coworker was really trying to get it back from her. Amy ghosted her, of course, so while she was out one day, I went in and took the laptop and gave it back to its rightful owner. Amy called the cops on me and said I stole her computer, but I explained what happened. She admitted to the cops that the computer wasn't hers and the cops said it wasn't their problem anymore. That one really made her hate me. She wasn't working at the time, so it's not like she had money to do anything or buy anything. She was literally just existing in a room in my apartment. She would disappear during the day, but I have no idea where she was going. She moved out after about 6 weeks. When she moved out of my apartment, I didn't even know she had left. I just noticed she wasn't coming or going for about a week. So Tom and I cleaned out her room. She left clothes, broken furniture, a cardboard dresser, and 5 39-gallon garbage bags of trash we collected from the mass piles of panty liners, rotting food, and ordinary trash we found in the room. It's a miracle we didn't have roaches. I found all my missing dishes, silverware, and cups all covered in food and grossness. I just threw it all away. I wish I still had the photos though. Oddly enough, about 6 months later, I opened my back door to take out the trash and my camera was in a bag hanging from my doorknob. I know Amy definitely didn't return it. For about 2 years after, every time I would find out that Amy was living with someone new, I would message them and send them the photos of her room. Papers in the trash that had her name on them. And I would tell them the whole story. One time it caused the people she was living with to throw her shit out on the porch. She had just moved in and they had small kids and they didn't want to risk it with her. I stopped after that. She knew it was me telling them too, so I figured I had sufficiently made my point. My wife can't come to terms with the fact that we are not and never will be rich. I'm at my breaking point. My wife and I met in college. She was in a marketing program, and I was in computer science. She ended up not finishing her degree, but got a fairly good starting job in the field anyway because her friend's dad hired her for his business. While she got her job through nepotism, I do know that she is talented and good at it. I finished my degree. We don't live in a high-dollar area for careers and have stayed because it's close to her family. She started out at about $35K a year, and I started out at about $65K a year. Flash forward to now. She is making $50K a year and I'm making $100K. It still doesn't feel like we are doing all that well. Sure, the bills are always paid and we can eat at the occasional nice restaurant, but we were barely able to afford a lower middle-class house. We can't afford to go on jet-setting exotic vacations. We don't live paycheck to paycheck, but the money just doesn't ever go as far as you would think. The thing is, I'm happy. I grew up dirt poor and my parents were always stressed. My wife and I never are. We have a nice albeit modest house. We can afford our small hobbies and comforts. We can go on vacations within the continental US, we just can't really afford to go to Hawaii or the Caribbean. We aren't rich, but we have it so much better than so many people. I feel truly thankful and content. She, on the other hand, has fallen deeper and deeper into depression and it's always the same things she talks about. She wants a new car. She wants hugely expensive renovations to the house, that we don't actually need. The house was updated when we bought it. She wants to go shopping for whatever specific brand of clothes or makeup. She wants a 2-week vacation in Maui or Paris. She recently just keeps talking about how she's not where she thought she'd be at this point in life. She goes on and on about it. She compares us to our friends and how good they have it. The thing is, those friends she is comparing us to are people who come from generational wealth. They have it good because their parents handed it to them. She can't seem to come to terms with just how good we truly have it. All she can see is what we don't have. The most frustrating thing is that a lot of our financial situation, that, again, I'm comfortable with, is held back by her. She's making about as much money as she can in her field without a degree. I am making twice what she is now, and I'm not done moving up the ladder. I've tried over and over again to get her to go back to school, but she just won't. At this point it might not even matter. Her credits are so old I don't even know if they would count anymore and she'd probably have to start over. On top of all that, she makes comments like I thought when I married a software engineer that I wouldn't have to work anymore, basically alluding to the fact that I'm not making enough to fit her lifestyle. I love her, but I'm so tired. I'm tired of coming home from a busy day at work, thinking that I'll finally get to relax and decompress, only to hear her constant negativity about money. I've talked with her so many times over the years and in so many ways, but I just can't get through to her. We've tried couples counseling, but it did little. I've begged her to do personal counseling, but she isn't interested. I'm at the end of my rope and I'll take any advice out there. At this point I almost want to tell her to divorce me already so she can find a nasty 50-year-old divorcee to be her sugar daddy. What can I do to help her accept our lot in life? Or is it time that I stop wasting energy and let her go? Keeping me up at night with your parties? Enjoy being shamed on the national news. In September of 2020, the apartment next to mine was rented out to 2 young women, both students. After they settled in a bit, it turned out they wanted to have a party. No big deal, except Belgium was in full lockdown at this point due to COVID, and you were supposed to only have one fixed visitor over. But then again, to be young again etc., so I didn't really care. During this time, I was working in healthcare. I work with the mentally disabled, but I volunteered for the AITA COVID team, meaning I got called upon to tend to those residents who were sick and needed quarantining, or were effectively diagnosed with COVID. This meant pretty long working hours and I spent about 10 to 11 hours a day at work, with a full-hour bike ride to and from work. Needless to say, I was pretty tired pretty much all the time. So I wasn't looking forward to the noise from a party, but I'm pretty chill and know that living in the city, some noise is to be expected. So they are having their party, and I can stand some noise and music. But this party was fucking wild. People shouting full on, in the hallway. Wrecking things and spilling alcohol everywhere. At about 4 in the morning, I introduced myself to the neighbors and asked them when they could expect their company of about 20 plus people to leave, and if they could refrain from having a party the next day, as I have to work and get up at 6 a.m. every day. So they promised they would keep it down the rest of the night and that they wouldn't have a party the next day. Plot twist, they didn't keep it down, and they did have another party the next night. And then did another one the day after. At this point, I had been going a full 3 nights without sleep and was nearing neurosis. Every night I had talked to the girls and every night they would be full of apologies and stuff, but nothing would change. I also felt terrible when I had to enter their place, because it would be absolutely packed with people and I worked with some very vulnerable people at work who I wouldn't want to spread COVID to. This was pre-tests, pre-vaccines, pre-much of the knowledge we now have about COVID. Luckily the weekend came and they went to their parents and I could recover a bit. Suffice to say, I wasn't really liking my new neighbors. During the next few weeks, they refrained from big parties, but they would have a constant flood of people coming over during the night. And by constant, I mean constant. Like their bell would ring 70 times a night and people would always be coming or going. And those people would be drunk and loud. Our communal hallway is pretty much an echo chamber because it's all stone and any noise will travel throughout the building. Basically I couldn't rely on sleep at night. It drove me crazy. I could only sleep Friday through Sunday, because then they would go off to their parents or whatever. I couldn't grasp how they could know this many people that would always be coming and going. During one night, while knocking on their door to complain about the noise, I encountered my upstairs neighbor, and decided that we would have to join forces to get this to stop. My neighbor told me some important bits of information. The reason there were people coming and going all the time was because they used their apartment as a makeshift bar and hangout. During this time, bars were closed due to COVID and all those students were using the big apartment to hang out. Moreover, across the street was another frat house with 5 boys living there, and that too was a secret hangout. So people would hang out at those 2 places and cross the street if they wanted a different atmosphere or wanted to see their other friends etc. And the boys from across the street would also come over 15 times a night. Most visitors seemed to be law students or affiliated with them. Basically our communal hallway was just a part of their cafe space now. So we tried talking to the girls. Then we started to talk to the visitors. None of them had any sympathy for us when we were asking them to be quiet at 4 a.m. in the morning. Most of them just laughed at us, as we were the pesky neighbors no doubt. Even more of them were just so wasted that they didn't know what they were doing. So we started calling the police dozens of times. Most of the time, they weren't let in and the police told us they couldn't do anything. We kept calling, as we wanted a record of our calls in the system. Belgium was still in full lockdown at this point and what they were doing was full of illegal. Even so, the police told us their hands were tied if they wouldn't open the door. When the police couldn't help, I turned to the next best thing. I'm a social worker and so I have no problems looking up information and calling around to look for help. This is what I did. Most places, student unions, police, town hall, were understanding but couldn't really do much. So I acted on the suggestion of the upstairs neighbor and contacted one of the girls' dean. I sent him a nice email about how I was sorry for bothering him and taking up his time, but I had this big group of students from his faculty ganging up every night and maybe he wanted to know about it since they were breaking every possible COVID rule that existed at that time? Especially since me and my neighbor were about to go to the papers with this story, as secret lockdown parties were becoming a thing in the papers at this point. This dean called me back right away and we had a nice talk about our problems. He told me he was on it. So basically what he did was call the law student girl, and her parents. Big drama ensued and we finally got to sit down with the girls and they finally sounded like they were sorry. Tears were shed for which I had no patience for to be honest. We learned that the police had actually been inside a few times and they were issued tickets for having secret parties. Those were €300 each a pop, so no idea why they didn't just stop. We learned they were not happy because the dean had called them up at 11 o'clock and they were still asleep. To which I said, well there's your problem. You are still asleep at 11 o'clock. I'm up at 6 every day and you girls haven't been a bit understanding about that. So we got to feel a bit like we got our revenge and we got to vent, but we kept it kind of nice and parted on good terms, hoping that this would be it and we could live together as nice neighbors. But if that were the case, I wouldn't be here, right? You'd think they would have gotten the point now, and would refrain from making noise and partying. Well, you'd be wrong. Basically what they did was they moved to the frat house across the street and started partying there. There were slightly less people running to and fro, but the noise was still a problem and we were now in the middle of the second COVID wave and these people were meeting up with big groups like crazy, while I hadn't seen a soul in almost a year. Never mind the people at my work, who were forbidden from even going to their own family. The whole thing was just ridiculous. My upstairs neighbor happened to film such a party across the street and had sent the clip to me. We were thinking about going to the press with our story but weren't really sure if it would be a good idea. So I posted the clip of the party on the subreddit of our country to test the waters. It got quite some comments and upvotes and it seemed most people were also sick of people disregarding the rules and having secret parties. After some talks with the upstairs neighbor, we decided to contact the press and simultaneously go up a step in the university hierarchy and contact the vice rector that had the power to start up a disciplinary case against the students. This person is one of 12 vice rectors for a total campus of about 15,000 students, so quite high up. Things moved fast. Local news actually picked up our story from Reddit and contacted me, and we gave some background info. They confirmed with the police that cops had been to our address dozens of times and across the street and weren't let in most of the time. We mentioned that the university was involved and that we hoped they would finally intervene. The next day, the piece was on their website. It went viral there, and got promoted to the sites of most national newspapers. Its headline was sensational enough, mentioning the dozens of times police had shown up and also mentioning how healthcare workers were being kept up by selfish students. At the same time, the vice rector contacted us to take our statements, which we already had prepared on paper, and informed us they would investigate and could possibly start disciplinary actions. At the same time, more reporters were contacting me throughout the day, and we made sure to mention that to her and link the university to the printed articles. The next day, while at work, I got a message from the upstairs neighbor that a film crew from the National News Watch was at our doorstep. He declined to talk to them, and I would have done the same, since this was getting pretty big now, but they made a segment anyway. And sure enough, that night at 7 p.m., here was my street and a short section about cops standing in front of a closed door a dozen times and the local press cop talking about the troubles of closed doors. Best part about it was that a student from the offending frat house across the street had let the film crew in, and said on camera exactly what we were accusing them of towards the university, that they had been having parties and didn't let the cops in and that they had done it multiple times. No idea what made him think that was a good idea. Anyway, trying not to make a huge story even longer, the press died down some time later and the disciplinary action from the university went through. Before the hearing, we sat down with the girls from our block and cleared some things up. We wanted to live like normal people together and we tried to make some amends. Because we put in a kind of good word for them, they got the lighter end of the stick, 40 hours of community service and some probation. The guys across the street got 80 hours each, and each had to write us a letter of apology, which I thoroughly enjoyed reading every time I got one. Sad part is, most of them sounded just like dumb young kids, but that was after getting called out on the news and being part of a disciplinary action. But we never wanted to escalate things this far. Some noise is to be expected when living in the same building, and we were never going to go to these extremes for some expected noises. But these people went to the extremes, and so we were forced to do the same. Rest of the year, a simple message on WhatsApp was enough to silence any noises we had coming from their apartment. If anything, I hope they learned that even very polite and chilled people can become very upset when presented with sleep deprivation and excessive noise.